Well, good afternoon, friends, and we welcome you to another installment of Kidney Talks with the Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center at George Washington University, also the Minority Organ Tissue and Transplant Education Program, or MOTEP, and the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Kendrick Curry, and I'm so excited to have a co-host and a leader in his own right of MOTEP, Dr. Clive Callender. Dr. Callender is going to share with us today about living donation, the best kidney transplant option. And I'm so excited that this forefather and leader of the movement to do kidney transplantations in Washington, D.C. and the nation is with us today. So, Dr. Callender, please share with us about living donation.
Thank you very much. And I'm excited to present to you today why liver donation is the best kidney transplant option. The next slide that you will see shows you one of the issues that is important to consider. For example, there are 5 stages of kidney disease. Now, stage 1, you have a normal kidney function and you have a creatinine clearance, which we call glomerular filtration rate, which is 90% or better. The irony of this is that the blood tests, your BUN and creatinine, are both normal. But if you're losing protein, whether the kidney function is normal or not, it means that you have kidney disease. And so it means that one of the earliest things that you need to get done is to get a kidney screening. And that will pick up kidney disease early. And of course, that's stage 1. Then there's stage 2, where there's mild disease. Again, the early tests may show that the kidney function is close to normal, but that's not good enough if you're spilling protein. The third is stage 3, moderate disease. At this stage, your kidney function tests demonstrate that your kidney is failing. Stage 4 and 5, 1 through 3 are reversible. Stage 4 and 5 are not. Next slide just tells you a little bit about what are sometimes the only sign that you can see. In stage 1, the only thing you may see is that you have foamy urine, which means that there's protein in your urine. That is only picked up by urinalysis and a protein analysis. Stage 2, again, blood tests may be going up a little bit, but not by much. And stage 3, a routine blood test will confirm kidney function. But these 3 stages are reversible. Stage 4 and 5, where the creatinine clearance is less than 30, this is a stage in which kidney function is not reversible, but you can have it maintained appropriately if you're handled by a kidney specialist. Stage 5, dialysis or transplantation are the only options. Next slide, please. Now, the point of kidney transplantation is to extend the life of the recipient. And the type of transplant that lasts the longest and therefore extends the life of the recipient the longest is live donor transplantation. Next slide, please. Because the things that occur with live donors is that we can check out the donor, and the donor has to be very healthy and have to have normally functioning kidneys. Then we can match. Secondly, we can match the blood type and the proteins of the donor and recipient so they match well. And most importantly, we coordinate the operation so that the donor kidney is out of the donor for the least amount of time before transplantation into the recipient. And this makes a big, big difference. The next slide. We have to emphasize that there are not enough donors. Deceased or alive. We've got more than 100,000 people waiting for kidney transplants. Generally, we do 20,000 transplants per year. Last year, we had the most we ever done. That's 40,000. But you can still see that difference between 40,000 and 100,000. Next slide, please. The good news is that there's been a huge increase in the number of African American and minority deceased donors. The bad news is the number of African American minority live donors has remained flat for the last decade, and for the last 5 years is actually dropped. Next slide, please. A healthy person can successfully donate a kidney without negative effects for the rest of their lives, and most of their expenses, if not all, can be covered by the recipient's insurance. Next slide, please. It is still true that 17 Americans die daily because of the organ donor shortage. The death rate on dialysis for patients is 10 to 100 times higher than those of renal transplant patients, which is why transplantation is the best option. But when you look at the fact that patients on the transplant waiting list for deceased donors have waiting times range from 5 to 10 years, next slide, and the waiting time for the living donors is no longer than 4 months, you realize that this is something that is the best option. In addition, the success rates for living donor transplants are 10 to 20% higher than for deceased donor transplants. Next slide, please. It is for these reasons that community education and empowerment has been something important for deceased donors. But we need to do the same thing for living donors. Living donor rates, as I mentioned before, have decreased between 1995 and 2014, and we've got to do something about that. The emphasis on living donation is a recent priority for African Americans and Latino Hispanics, but it's something we must do. Next slide, please. Therefore, we must encourage as many people who have end-stage renal disease to begin looking for living donors. It's a new mandate that highlights the use of grassroots and face-to-face presentations, as well as multimedia and social media campaigns, because this is an important next step that must be taken care of. Next slide. And in conclusion, I would say to you that we know that the data shows that between 14 to 7% of the patients who are helped by the Living Donor Assistance Center is only 14 to 17%. When the people on dialysis, 33% of African Americans make up people who are waiting for transplants, and about 30% are Latino Hispanics. So therefore, we can do better, and we need to do what we can, because we also have to identify and eliminate the obstacles to working up living donors, which will be addressed by some people who will follow me talking about what happened to them as they became living donors. Next slide, please. The work of Dr. Melanson at George Washington University suggests that local, regional, and exchange donations may be better than national exchange donations, along with the other things that need to be done to allow living donors to be possible. And I think this is something that you need to keep in mind, that at GW, they're doing things differently and better than across the nation. And so therefore, living donation can be optimized by getting transplanted at George Washington. Next slide, please. And I think this then allows me to have Dr. Curry introduce to you the next person, which is the live donor person, who will talk to you about how they became a live donor.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Callender, for another excellent presentation that just reminds us about the importance of live kidney donation. And I would like to begin to bring to our view James Shelby, who is a living transplant donor. And we'd like to hear from him, and then we'll go in and begin to ask questions. Welcome so much, James. You're on mute right now, but we invite you to come off of mute. And those of you that are in the chat, I ask that you feel free to make comments on Facebook. And I would just love to hear what your questions are. So feel free to put your questions in, and we're going to have Mr. Shelby share his experience with us today. Mr. Shelby?
Yes, sir. And thank you, gentlemen, both for having me and giving me an opportunity to share the living donor experience. I have a very good friend who's actually like a sister to me, Tracy Chavis. A few years back, she had hereditary um, kidney disease, and it was something that got progressively worse over time. Ultimately, a few years back, it was determined that she was going to need a kidney transplant and got on the donor list. And when the opportunity was brought to me to, when the story was brought to me, I immediately jumped at the opportunity um, to put my hat in the ring, or so to speak, to see if I was a match. I'm not quite sure where the urge necessarily came from, because, as a Black man, our community, there are a lot of misconceptions about kidney donation and just, a lot of the things that take place within the healthcare community. And so what I really wanted to do today, if possible, is just to kind of, shed light, or, highlight any gray areas that people may have in regards to what the process is like. It was a lot different than what my thoughts and ideas were about it before I went through it, and would love to just share in any way that I can. So thank you again for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome, and we have questions that are popping in from those that are on Facebook Live, and we're just excited about trying to move forward with some of these questions. I'll begin with I believe it's Nikki Graham, who says, "How long does the average person live on hemodialysis? I've had 2 kidney transplants."
The mortality rate on dialysis is 10% of the patients who are on dialysis die every year. So that at the end of 10 years, uh, most of those patients have died. But there are exceptions to the rule. There's some patients I know of who've been on dialysis for 20 years. But in general, the answer to your question is that 10% of the patients on hemodialysis die every year. And when you look at the success rate of transplantation, and you look at the mortality or death rate of patients on dialysis, you recognize that there's 10 to as much as 100 times higher mortality rate of the dialysis patient than the transplant patient. And then, of course, what Mr. Shelby is talking about, the wonders of what happens when you have somebody who's alive who donates, that becomes something that is heroic, because the difference between life and death is what happens when you have somebody who can give you a kidney within 3 to 4 months, in contradistinction to the person who's waiting for a deceased donor who may have to wait as long as 5 to 10 years. Right. One of the things I'd like to ask Mr. Shelby is, what were the obstacles that you encountered in your effort to become a donor for your friend?
The biggest obstacle, I guess, was just the obstacle of ignorance, I suppose. I had no relationship to donating. No one in my family ever, encountered the need, and so I wasn't really familiar with the process. And so the minute I reached out to GW, transplant, Dr. Melanson, him and his team, they did wonders in, bringing me up to speed, identifying, what was needed through the process, and just basically getting me started. And so it was really just the biggest thing I had to overcome was just the lack of awareness and familiarity with the process in general.
What about the test that they did to you to try to determine whether you were healthy enough to be a donor and whether you could actually be a donor?
So that's a good question. I have a relatively healthy lifestyle to begin with. I'm primarily plant-based, and so live a relatively good life, low stress, those sorts of things. But in terms of the blood work, all of this was pretty much taking place with us during COVID. So it kind of extended the process a bit more. And it was more of a commitment of time, so to speak, just given the number of visits you have to go to the facility, just determine match and that sort of thing. But I hope I answered your question, Doctor.
How how long? What was the time period between the time you wanted to become a donor and the time you actually became a donor?
It was around a year total. Through my process, when I found out I had kidney stones, and so I had to have a procedure to get the kidney stones removed prior to the donation, which extended the period of time a little bit longer. But we were everyone involved was motivated, just because, to your point, the donor list is so long, and Tracy, my recipient, was on dialysis for so many hours a day, and it was extremely draining, as you know. So everyone involved was extremely motivated to accelerate the process, but be responsible to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to get it done as quickly as possible.
How long ago was that transplant done?
2020, September 8th, 2020.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. And how's your health and life been since that?
My personal life?
Yes.
Oh, so it's actually gotten better, crazy enough. Even when I went through the process, the one thing I didn't understand, and you hear this a lot in, different types of religions and those sorts of things, but there really is something that you unlock when you put yourself into the position of being of service and giving. And when I went through, when I agreed to go through the process, I had no idea that I was going to get so much by giving. And so my life has actually been exponentially more improved just by, being more confident in my ability to be of service to my community and to my family, and the reactions that I get from Dr. Melanson and his team when I meet with them. Just regards to the gesture and just the opportunity to just talk about it as frequently as I can, given the fact that there aren't a lot of, people of color, specifically, Black men, putting themselves in position to donate. So I'm really trying to elevate the visibility to just let people know that it's not, regardless of whatever preconceived notion you may have about it, I can be someone as an example that that the process is really rewarding for both people involved.
Do you feel like a hero?
No, I feel like an ordinary person that did an extraordinary thing. And I think the concept of hero is might be a little ambitious for me, and I think it might remove the average person from, just even thinking about it. But it's a really we've got so much. There's a reason why I think we have two. And you can survive, you can make it with just one, and you can live a healthy, sustainable, thriving life. And so not necessarily a hero, doctor, but definitely just a ordinary person who did an extraordinary thing, which I think everybody has the capacity to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Just a quick question. If you had to look into your camera and just tell the brothers and sisters out there why, not only why you did it, but encourage them that are sitting on the fence to go ahead and make those live donations, what would you say?
The process is nowhere near what you may think it is if you have no experience. If you are a person that is looking to contribute and to give and to show love and appreciation for the gifts that you've been giving, there is no greater gift than that you can extend to someone than the gift of life. And there's someone in your life and in your circle who may be in need. And I would encourage you to put yourself and your spirit in the position to receive the blessing that you can receive if you're willing to give. And everything will work out.
I think that's extremely powerful, and I think our audience really needed to hear that. So thank you so much, Mr. Shelby. And there are more questions that are coming in. Dr. Callender, one young lady says, Adela says that if my sister's doctor told her that she may need dialysis, can water pills help her situation?
Uh, it depends because some people who actually have kidney failure still make urine. And so uh, the water pills will not prevent her from going on dialysis, but it will help her to continue to make urine. But in terms of once they tell you that you're in stage 4, stage 5, especially at stage 5, the only thing that's going to help you is dialysis or transplantation.
Wow.
And the sooner you get that, the better, because if you delay going on dialysis, you get sicker. And of course, the best thing is once you find out that you're in stage 4 or stage 5, then you need to look for a donor. And
That's
if
right.
you can find a living donor, that's the best thing for you. Or if you can find a friend, doesn't have to be a relative, could be a friend or a stranger. But there's little question that the lifespan of somebody who gets a transplant is better than the lifespan of somebody who has to stay on dialysis. And no, just a specific answer to your question, the drugs like Lasix and drugs that are diuretics will not keep you from going on dialysis. Uh,
Wow.
what the best thing I can say is that when you're in stage 4 or 5, start looking for a donor of some sort. You can go to church and social groups and let people know that you need a donor, and not infrequently a donor will show up. Sometimes you have donors who are like Mr. Shelby, or you have other donors who just want to give a kidney and they come off the street and they say, I want to help somebody. And so uh, the chances of you getting a transplant are much better if you let people know that you need it, just as Mr. Shelby's recipient
Yeah,
did.
just quickly, Mr. Shelby, were you the same blood type as your friend?
I was not.
Okay.
I was not. And I just got I just talked to her a couple of weeks ago, and she goes in very frequently for her checkups, and she just found out that I might be using the right terms.
GFR,
Her GFR numbers are like 75 now.
Oh, wow.
wonderful,
Before they were, in the single digits when we
right?
initially got the transplant. And so she called me and was in tears, and it was a really, really great conversation that she and I had. So even though we weren't the same blood type, no rejections, and her numbers are looking really, 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 really good. They're better than they were, you know, before things started going downhill, so to speak.
I was going to ask this question. You've really alluded to, Dr. Callender, but it's one that we is worth repeating. What can we do to prevent kidney disease?
I think one of the most important things to do is to, uh, I guess first, I think one of the things that we don't do is that enough of us don't have protein
Hmm.
screening. Get a urinalysis and find out if you have protein in your urine. Because what happens is if you have a normal creatinine at that time, they can do tests to find out what's causing the problem before you get to the point where you need dialysis or transplantation.
Hmm.
So one of the things I would say you need to do is have somebody check your urine for protein. And even if you have a normal kidney function, if you have protein in the urine, that means your kidneys are in danger of failing, and you need to have some tests done to find out what's causing it so it can be reversed. Uh, and so If you have high blood pressure, then you need to take medication. If you're overweight, you need to lose weight. If you have diabetes, your diabetes needs to be controlled. So those are the things that should be done. Drinking a lot of fluid helps because your kidneys preserve. Uh, all of the poisons are eliminated by the kidneys. So the other thing that you need to do is to remember a healthy lifestyle. Loving yourself, taking care of yourself, uh, exercising, 100 at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Uh, Trying to resist the temptation to eat a lot of red meat. Trying to have a plant-based diet. All those things help. So that then, of course, staying away from drugs, from smoking, from abuse, other abuses. Those are the things that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Those
Wow.
are just some of the litany of things that you can do to try to help prevent developing end stage renal disease.
Yeah.
Uh, Renal disease is common, but you don't want to go to the irreversible stages of renal disease where the creatinine clearance of the GFR, as you mentioned, becomes less than 20, because at that point it's too late. But if you do it early, the stage 1 to 3, then you can reverse that kidney disease. And that then is what this program is all about, trying to get you to get the diagnosis of kidney disease early when it can be reversed. And then also recognizing that if you get to stage 5, try to get a friend, somebody or a stranger, so they can get you a kidney so that you can have a long life, long healthy life.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, and I think that's helping our viewers. I would like to ask a question. I think Susan raised a very important question, um, and Dr. Callender, you can take this, and James, I'd like for you to comment on it. It's around age constraints. Can a healthy 67-year-old donor donate a kidney, and are there age constraints?
The answer is yes. The oldest donor that I know of is about in the 80s. And there are age constraints, but the age constraints are related to comorbidities. So if you have no other comorbidity, age is not a problem.
Okay. James, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the age range you are and the age range of your friend with regard to thinking through this donation.
So I will be 46 in September.
Okay.
So
Young
when
man.
I donated, I was 43. She is about, uh,
Telling a woman's age, huh?
sorry about that. I'm not
Don't
going to
tell
do
her
that.
name. That's it.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that, Doc. So she's a few years older, the mother of twin boys, and for me, at least, from a donor's perspective, I felt like most of the conversation, most of the criteria was just based around desire and just healthy, like living. I mean, and making sure that your body is squared away and capable of giving in such a manner. So I don't think. At least from my standpoint, being in my mid 40s, it's more about having a healthy lifestyle, eating right. I used to talk to my kidneys when I was going through the process. I would drink
Mm,
water and be like, "I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna get you in the right frame of mind to give to this woman." And so it's a relationship, and I think having more healthier relationships with our bodies based on the way that we talk to ourselves, based on the way that we feed it, and the energy that we put into it. Um, that was very important, and I think just as critical as an age constraint, so to speak.
sure. Dr. Callender, we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to make sure that our audience is clear. What's a normal GFR, and what is normal creatine?
Okay. The normal glomerular filtration rate, which is what we're talking about, is anywhere. You'd like it to be between. You like it to be 100. Like to be
Okay,
100%. But you have to
that's for
recognize that
GFR. Okay,
the glomerular filtration rate or creatinine clearance is 100 is the ideal. But as long as it's over 50, you're not going to have any symptoms. The problem is that you can be at 80 and not have any symptoms. And that's why I emphasize getting the urine protein test, because that will tell you earlier than the blood urea, nitrogen, and creatinine. Creatinine is a blood test that measures the uh, protein in your body, and the normal creatinine is around 1. So as the kidney function uh, decreases, the creatinine increases. So for a man, it's around 1. For a woman, it's about 0.9. And so when it gets above 1.3 or 1.4, that's an abnormal creatinine. And it means that you have damage to your kidneys. What happens earlier than that is the protein in the urine. And somebody asked about, can you have protein in the urine and not have kidney disease? That is accurate, because there are other things that can cause protein to be in the urine. But if you have protein in the urine, then it's time to find out whether everything else is normal about you, whether you have diabetes, whether you have hypertension, or whether you're overweight, because those things can cause you to have protein in your urine. But usually, when you have protein in the urine, you actually have kidney disease, and tests need to be done then when it's early, so you can have that kidney disease reversed.
Okay. What about drinking cranberry juice? Is that helpful? You mentioned earlier drinking fluids. Should that be fluids like cranberry juice, those with sugar or no sugar? Should we primarily
Cranberry
drink
juice
water?
is often thought of because it is thought that it alkalinizes the urine and prevents stone formation for some people. And so it's a healthy juice, and it's recommended, especially if you're a stone former,
Okay.
kidney stone former.
What about those sugary drinks?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with diabetes, and because when we talk about sugary drinks, we think about diabetes. But most people have a normal pancreas. They can withstand the sugary drinks. But it's those people who don't have a normal pancreas, who are prone to diabetes, who sugary juice reveals the fact that their pancreas is abnormal. So it's not the juice itself that is the problem. It is the abnormal pancreas, and the cells in the pancreas that are responsible for this are the beta cells. And when they are in adequate number, you can drink some sugary drinks. If they're not, then your diabetes then becomes manifest.
Well, I would just like to ask James. I know you said pretty much a plant-based diet earlier. Tell us a little bit about the diet you have, and your eating and drinking habits now, um, with your current lifestyle and having one kidney.
So I eat, as I said, a predominant plant-based diet with a lot of legumes, beans, kale. Because I am a kidney stone producer, I have to stay away from oxalate. So I stay away from spinach, I stay away from beets, I stay away from almonds. There's certain other kinds of nuts and stuff that I can't eat, but I'm very conscious about, staying away from those oxalates, because those kidney stones ain't no joke. So, but the diet, I don't drink alcohol, any alcohol, and drink a lot of water, drink kombucha,
Mm.
and just try to stay away from a lot of processed foods, man. I mean, the sugar and the salt, for me, not to necessarily disagree with what Dr. Callender said, but the processed sugars and the salts and stuff are things that I really like to stay away from. If it's green, life is what I pretty much eat for the most part. Now, this hasn't always been this way. You talking about a brother who I used to be 250 pounds, man, drinking 40s and eating all kind of Taco Bells and taquitos from 7-Eleven. I'm that guy. So, I don't want to paint this picture of like this holy cat. Nah, I travel the road just like everybody else. The only difference is maybe I decided to do a couple of things different.
Sure. Sure.
But that's it.
That's super helpful. We have a question from, I believe, Joanne. It says, "Do people with diabetes have a normal pancreas?" Dr. Callender.
Uh, what is particularly different about the pancreas and the diabetic is that the beta cells, see, there are two types of diabetes. Type 1 is where you have a situation in which the beta cells do not function at all and they do not produce insulin. Okay, and so for those people, pancreas transplant is probably the best thing, other than, of course, insulin. Type 2 diabetes is people who've had a normal pancreas, but as a consequence of things that have happened, they are no longer sensitive to their own insulin. And that may be because they have antibodies to the insulin. So it's not actually the pancreas that's the problem with type 2 diabetes. It's their own response to their own insulin that they produce, that the pancreas is producing, but the insulin is not functioning in the body. So there are two types of diabetes again. Type 1, where the pancreas does not produce insulin at all, and type 2, where the pancreas is producing insulin, but the body is not sensitive to it.
Okay. Now, someone raised a question, Sydney, asking about this water drinking. He says, "Is drinking 120 ounces of water per day going to improve stage 3 kidney disease?"
In many instances, it may help, but what is more important is to find out what has caused you to be in stage 3. Is it hypertension? We have treatment for that. Is it not hypertension but obesity? Is it the diabetes, the control of the diabetes? So the water is good, but that's not the cure. The cure is to find out what has caused you to be in stage 3 and to uh, improve that. And if it's diabetes, control the diabetes. Hypertension, control the high blood pressure. If it's obesity, lose weight. So those are the things that looking for, and we also looking for doing diagnostic and genetic testing to find out if you've got a genetic form of kidney disease. And those things at stage 3 can be improved. So at stage 3 is the time that the kidney disease is reversible. And so it's time for them to make a diagnosis of what's causing you to be in stage 3. Water alone is not adequate. Drinking water is healthy, and that's good for you, but it's not going to keep you from going from stage 3 to stage 4.
Yeah. So James, would you share with us, and I believe you started it, how long was the actual recovery process, you say, or are you still recovering?
Oh, no. So the kidney, you guys, or George Washington, GW does kidney transplants like the first and the second and fourth Tuesday of the month or something like that. That year, the Tuesday just so happened to land on my birthday. So September 8th was a Tuesday. And we had the surgery that Tuesday morning. I was out of the hospital by Friday, I believe, and only just for monitoring. There was no, no issues or anything. I took off the following week, not necessarily because I had to, but just because, I just felt like relaxing and meditating and all that kind of stuff. But I was up and walking that weekend around the block. I was told to walk around a little bit. So I would get up in the mornings and just walk around the block. I was doing that Saturday morning. The marks on I think there are 3 incisions on my body, 2, and then like a C-section or C-section scar, I guess, below the navel, slight, small. You can't even see them. I would have to actually point them out to you. So I answered your question in the long route. I took the same
No, that's fine.
answer, but it I was no more than 2 weeks. I would say 10 days. And I was back to 100%. And we're really just talking about minor stomach pain. Just imagine doing like 1,000 push-ups or something like that, where your stomach muscles are just sore. That for me, that's what the majority of it felt like.
How long was the pain? How many days did you have pain?
Uh, Probably for about the whole 10 days. It probably and it started obviously to subside after a while. But after I would say 2 weeks total, the pain was gone completely.
What kind of medication do you have to be on when you have a kidney donor? Let's say a month after the donation. What kind of medication do you have to be on?
Only medication you got to be on is love. That's it.
Yeah.
Every, everything else is nothing at all. Um, Nothing.
Wow. Um, we encourage those that are still with us to continue to put your questions in, because we have Mr. James Shelby and Dr. Clive Callender that are available to answer those particular questions. Dr. Callender, I do want to ask you, you made a comment about 17%. I think what I wanted to know, what percentage of the 17 Americans who die daily from kidney disease, what percentage of those are African American?
About 30%.
About
Uh,
30%.
and actually, the minority population represents approximately 60% of those people who are waiting for transplants. And so we're so disproportionately afflicted and affected by kidney disease because of our predisposition to diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. And so for those reasons, we need organs more than any other ethnic group.
Sure.
And so this is our problem. So we need to be part of the solution.
And I think James is a great example of someone who's brave enough to share life with another, and that's I think that's very very important. What could be said about if we need 100,000 folk on 100,000 on the transplant list, and we can only get 20,000 done? Um, how what's your recommendation for closing the gap? More
Well,
seminars on living donation, or what else?
there are two ways to address it. First is to decrease the incidence of kidney disease, and, which we can do by getting you to love yourself, take care of yourself, and adopt healthy lifestyles. And then the second is to educate and empower our group so they understand the importance of not only adopting healthy lifestyles, but also early on doing the things that are essential to maintain normal kidney function. And if there are changes, then do something about it. And then, of course, going to the community, educating and empowering them so we can overcome the 5 myths that are responsible for us not participating in transplant solution. That's one issue. Then, of course, the other issues that are part of the solution are also increasing human donations, number one. Number two, understanding that regenerative medicine, stem cell transplantation, and other things like that can eventually result in getting more organs. Then, of course, xenotransplantation. I mean, getting organs from other members of other species like pigs, etc., which we have done more recently. These are things that can help us. So, stem cell transplantation, xenotransplantation, 3D printing is another thing that can be done. So that we need to be sensitive and recognize that we're in a technological era in which new things are being done, and not uh, put anything off the table because xenotransplantation is something that I believe in the next 3 to 5 years will take off to help us. Because last year, yes, we did 40,000, which is the most we've ever done, but you still got those 17 people dying every day, every single day. So therefore, whatever else we can do to get organs for those people who are dying while waiting becomes critical. And I think our efforts are going to the African American community to educate and empower the community to address the 5 myths, the concerns that that we don't need organs, the concerns that there are religious obstacles, which there aren't, the concerns that at this point that we're going to be guinea pigs. All of these things are part of it, and understanding that while racism is alive and well, while we're all the same race, we still have to do things that take advantage of the fact that we can help ourselves. And so,
That's
educating and empowering, I think we can make a difference. A difference, I think, that has been made and must be made even more so as time goes on.
Yeah, I'm so glad you started dealing with the misinformation and debunking myths that are around. And perhaps on another show, we'll have to deal with xenotransplantation, which is going to be a huge bioethical, religious dilemma for many because of the association with pigs and pork and then growing organs as such. It's going to be very interesting discussion around that. I see another question has come in. I think these questions are very important because they touch the heart of the people and that are really making decisions. Anthony has raised this question. What do you do for stage 4?
Stage 4.
And what can you take to help?
Stage 4 becomes a situation in which you and your kidney specialist become like father and son, and mother and daughter. And you really becomes important to optimize your blood pressure, optimize the management of your diabetes, and to do everything you can to delay the need for dialysis or transplantation, which becomes mandatory when you reach stage 5. So it is that stage when your visits to the kidney specialist become very critical and important, because that's the stage where you prevent the need for dialysis and transplantation. You can't get back to stage 3, but you can delay the time it takes. And in that time, you can be looking for a donor and maybe you can encounter somebody like James Shelby along the way.
That's
And
right.
that person can save your life.
Well, it's very good that you mentioned that, because James, I heard you say that this was a friend of yours, and a lot of times, folk in various communities don't talk about health a lot, or those critical matters, and that's why I think shows like this are very, very helpful.
Agreed.
And I commend you again, James, for what you have done. Felicia says this. She says, I am trying to be a living kidney donor for my father who is on dialysis, but I have to work first on lowering my blood pressure. Any words of wisdom besides the medication and changing of diet and all of the other things that are there?
Well, losing weight is something else you can do
I didn't
if
want to
you're
say
overweight. But other than lowering your blood pressure, taking the right diet, losing weight sometimes helps more than it does in others. Although I must tell you that some of the people who had the worst blood pressures that I've ever met are people who are thin, who look like Mr. Shelby. So it's not always the overweight person who's hypertensive. But anyway, that just to answer your question. Uh, the only thing you can do at that point is to take the blood pressure medicine, exercise, and continue to follow your doctor's orders.
Just quickly with this one, then, Doc. This is from Sydney. Uh, does drinking coffee worsen stage 3?
There's no evidence that drinking coffee worsens stage 3. The caffeine, which is in stage 3, has been interesting enough, been studied more recently, and has been shown in many instances to be advantageous. So that I do not think that coffee alone itself the caffeine is going to worsen stage 3. I think really making sure that you have no conditions that are treatable, whether you get the diagnosis by genetic testing or you get special tests of the kidney itself. I think it becomes critical at stage 3 to do everything you can the right way so that you can go from back from stage 3 to stage 1.
Mm. All right. So we've had an outstanding session, and before we close out, I do want Mr. Shelby just to share perhaps another word of encouragement to those that are out there that are on the fence, that are considering live donation, that really want to be a help, and to even have some. They may even have some fear because they of the unknown. But if you can look at James Shelby, you'll begin to see that this is a real possibility, and great things can happen when you're willing to share what you literally have. So, Mr. Shelby.
So we've got a pastor on the board, so I'm not going to be preachy, but my father said that most people want an action, but what they need is a process. And
Mm.
he said that to me one day when I asked him to borrow some money. So, I was very frustrated with him at the time when he said
Yep.
that because I knew he didn't want to give it to me. But 25 years later, I get it. Um, for me, I think developing a relationship and improving a relationship with your daily actions and giving yourself, small incremental wins. When we do get to a point to where we have these illnesses or even the ability to help, we end up being reactionary because there's something we've got to do, like me getting my kidney stones done first, the woman, the person with the getting the blood pressure lowered. If you develop a process of just trying to be of service and putting ourselves in the best position to be of service with not just our actions but with our health as well, just makes for an overall healthier lifestyle and a way of living and being extremely proactive in that way. So I don't want to be preachy, but at the same time, we are as a people going to have to get to a point to where, we start shifting our relationships to things, and it starts with eating and being healthy and spiritual and all of that. And so, I don't know if I answered your question, Doc, but that's what I got.
Well, you know what? You no doubt did. And we thank you for, your faith and your story, because that's what this is really all about. And that's one of the reasons we have this whole kidney talk in the first place, to really talk about, you know, how we can become better, how we can become more healthy, how we can help each other, how we can strengthen each other. And that faith is part of that journey. Dr. Callender, any final thoughts or words before
Yes, I
we end
do. I
Kidney
think
Talk?
that it is often for people not to recognize the spiritual benefit of
Yes.
giving and the beauty of forgiveness and giving. And James Shelby has demonstrated to all of us the positive cerebral and spiritual benefits of donation. And I think let's not miss that huge message.
Well, I surely don't want to miss that huge message coming on the heels of Easter Sunday, a resurrection. I can really talk about giving there, but I am so excited about the possibility of us having more dialogue and discussion around living donation, and making sure that we help our people, because the only one that will help us is us.
Yep.
And so we need to do a better job of not only taking care of ourselves, but sharing and caring and helping one another. I'm so glad that you're enjoying these talks, and we want you to keep following us on blackdoctors.org. We'll have some great great webinars for you that are aimed at providing you with information. And remember that information plus application leads to emancipation, which is freedom. And we want you to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can be free if you work together, you learn together, and you apply what you learn. So thank you so very much. We're looking forward to you being with us in another couple of weeks, and we'll be right here with Kidney Talks with the Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center at GW, with MOTEP, the Minority Organ Tissue Transplant Education Program, and the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., where I happen to be privileged to pastor. I'm Kendrick Curry, and you've had Dr. Clive Callender and Mr. James Shelby. And we bid you a goodbye and have a great and wonderful weekend. Thank you so very much. Take care and be well.
Thank you.